ISIS claims knife attack that killed three at German diversity festival. Okay, guys, before we get into this, I have to say that this is a story that when I first heard about this breaking news, I literally was like, thought that this was essentially this event, which is real, basically reads like what you would think a Russian disinformation campaign from like 5 years ago would read. But it actually happened this way. I can't Okay, let's get into it. The knife attack at let me see if I can pronounce this properly. Zolingen's Festival of Diversity in Germany left 3 dead and 8 wounded, with victims suffering targeted neck wounds, and has been linked to ISIS after the group claimed responsibility, calling the assailant a soldier of the Islamic State who aimed to avenge Muslims in Palestine and everywhere. Although ISIS did not provide evidence for its claim, German authorities have arrested a 15-year-old suspect who is believed to have prior knowledge of the attack and a 26-year-old Syrian man who surrendered in blood-stained clothing and confessed to the stabbings. Police are investigating his connections to a terrorist group abroad. Solingen, celebrating its 650th anniversary, had its festivities halted abruptly as Mayor Tim Kurzbach lamented, quote, "Last night our hearts were torn apart. We in Solingen were full of horror and grief." Chancellor Olaf Scholz and President Frank-Walter Steinmeier condemned the attack, with Scholz stating, quote, "We mourn the victims and stand by their families as the nation grapples with this act of terror." Okay, let me get into the details of this story because once again, this literally reads like something that 5 years ago I would have thought was a completely made up effort to just foment distrust within a society, right? You can't. When we this was first breaking news, I sent this to Armin and I said, "You can't make this up." So, what do I mean? Literally, so there is this town. This town was celebrating its 650th anniversary. The theme of their annual festival this year, oh my God, was literally the Festival of Diversity. Literally, literally titled the Festival of Diversity. All of a sudden, I hear news about there being a knife attack there. And I'm like, uh-oh, what could this be? 3 people are already dead. Several more are injured. All 3 of the people who are dead were between the ages of like 55 and to 75, so older adults. And then I start to look into this because I have a very conservative approach to these things. I wait for more information. I don't jump to conclusions that this is automatically going to be what I suspect it's going to be. I wait. I start to hear some trickle that the attack was carried out by an Arab looking man, and this was before they had actually apprehended the suspect. He was still on the run at large. And so I was like, okay, I don't fully trust these news stories. Let's wait some more. So now he has been captured and all the details come out. The attacker was a 26-year-old man from Syria who was an asylum seeker. Not only was he an asylum seeker, he was a rejected asylum seeker. He was a rejected asylum seeker who was supposed to have been deported from Germany. But he was not deported from Germany because when the German officials went to go look for him, went to go find him, they couldn't find him. And he just disappeared into the ether, disappeared out of the system. And then he went on to commit what is being called a terrorist attack by German authorities. He committed this terrorist attack, killing 3 people, wounding several more, traumatizing this town. And this attack has been claimed by ISIS. Now, I want to point out that it is not 100% certain that this was an ISIS attack because sometimes they have a history of claiming things that maybe they didn't actually do, but they have claimed the attack. And so this terrorist attack has now sparked massive debate within. Yeah, Dia saying they knocked on his door, but he wasn't home, so they gave up. Yeah. And again, this I can't get over the fact that this literally reads like what I would think some deranged conservative thinks is happening across the world. You know what I mean? But I'm like, oh no, but this one's real. This one's actually real. Like, are you kidding me? A terrorist attack by a rejected asylum seeker literally at a diversity festival? Like the irony is like just hitting me so much. Like I Armin, first of all, what do you think of my reaction to just the facts on its face?
Yeah, no, it seems like exactly um the points that the so-called far right people were making, all wrapped up in just one event. By the way, it's so interesting how you see so many people coming out and saying like that the problem here is that this is going to give in to the far right narrative. That's their main concern. And like, I thought the main concern is that people are dying with knife attacks, but hey, I didn't know. Okay, that the concern is actually so-called far right people being proven right. Apparently that's the main issue here. So that was interesting to see a lot of analysts not actually going right directly to the concern of people being threatened, the security concerns, rather than, oh no, this is going to help the far right. And also, it's interesting how they're calling out the far right, the so-called far right, while now them saying the same things that the so-called far right were saying for so many years. I
Yep.
don't understand.
Yep.
I don't
Yep.
understand. Like, you are condemning them, but now you're saying the things that they have been saying. Well, so what? Why are how are they far right if now you all are on the same freaking page that this needs to stop? Like many the centrists, even many leftists are now in Germany are like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
this has gone too far. We need to stop mass migration. By the way, the far right is now going to be emboldened. Okay, but what's the problem? You are saying they were just are is their crime that they were ahead of you with this narrative? Is that why they are far right? I don't
Mhm.
understand.
They just say it
So
in a way that's unacceptable, apparently. No, this reminds the similar thing played out in Sweden when finally, like, the centrist and leftist party came around to being like, "Oh, yeah, our so-called far-right party actually had the right policy on immigration. We just we just didn't
yeah,
want to admit it for so long." Um, so here's the thing. This has caused a massive national conversation. And if there are Germans in the live chat right now, please give me more information or correct me if I'm saying anything wrong. So, according to the German media, English German media that I was watching prior to covering this, some of the responses have been a ban on knives in public spaces, like public festivals and also like long distance buses, that kind of thing. Another response has been mention of cutting benefits for rejected asylum seekers. And then a third one was to restart deportations from Afghanistan, excuse me, restart deportations to Afghanistan and to Syria. So there's so much more that we need to unpack about this. So basically, the some members from the AFD party have called for a full-blown moratorium on immigration for 5 years, including a moratorium on asylum, a moratorium on naturalization, and a moratorium on new citizenship. And that seems like going after the issue with a broadsword and not a surgeon's scalpel because there are a lot of valuable people that Germany probably really wants.
I
And I
don't.
know Armin will
I just
probably.
support. I By the way, I like how the things that I used to say that people are like, okay, Armin, that's never going to happen. Every time I say that, Germany comes and does something, and we're like, okay, maybe it can happen, right? Because like, for example, I said in the citizenship test, you need to have support for, you need to say that you have support for Israel. before that should be part of the test. And people are like, Armin, you don't like what the hell Armin is saying. He doesn't exist in the real world. That is delusional. No country is going to do that. And within weeks after I said that, Germany came and did that.
You
So
know,
I,
Armin,
you know, it
you
seems like
can call me out by name. It's not
no,
people.
no,
You're
no. It
talking about
wasn't.
me.
No. It wasn't just you. It was people in the live chat. You didn't call me delusional. People in the live chat were calling me delusional for this, right? You didn't call me delusional, right? So I think like my ideas are actually more grounded in reality than people think. I said now another thing I said that there needs to until you could figure this out, there needs to be an absolute stop, a complete stop to immigration, right? And a lot of people are like, okay, Armin, sure, whatever. Nobody's even going to suggest, nobody serious would even suggest that, right? And now a lot of politicians in Germany are seriously suggesting that. I'm not saying it will happen, but it is within the window of consideration. It is grounded in reality. They are saying that maybe we should completely stop migration, and I completely agree that sometimes you need surgical knife instead of like a sword. But if you cannot do surgery, then go with it with the sword. Okay, if you are not a good surgeon, then pick up the fucking sword. So yeah, if you are capable of surgically removing a problem, then surgically remove the problem. But if you can't, then obviously stop the migration until you get to a point where you could be more surgical about it. When you can't be surgical about it, then the sword is legitimate. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I want to walk through some of the proposed measures. So let's see. The government had okay, so new measures will include a ban on knives at public events and long distance buses and trains. Berlin will also cut social benefits for rejected asylum seekers if they have claims in other European countries. Refugees who travel to their home countries could lose their protection status, which is very interesting to me that this is not already a policy, which is crazy to me because I have a disproportionate amount of my friends that are either current, former refugees or asylum seekers. And at least here in America and in other countries like Austria, like it is a given that you cannot travel to your home country. The entire idea being that if you could be safe in your home country, you would have just moved to a new city or something instead of leaving the entire nation. So that was maybe there's more detail to that in the German bureaucracy than what's being said in English because I'm like, what? That's not already standard? Um, like I have people that are close to me that have made incredible sacrifices of being separated from their family from for almost 10 years because they had to prioritize securing their safety and citizenship within a nation that will protect them over going home to go visit them. That was I couldn't deal with that. Okay, so um there was also a measure that they will resume deportations of Afghans and Syrians who have been convicted of serious criminal offenses or suspected of being radical Islamists. So this is where things get complicated, and this is what I want to dive into with Armin. Resuming the deportations to Syria and Afghanistan specifically. So these countries were singled out based on it being the country of origin of many of these attacks that have happened recently. This is actually more complicated than people want to admit because conducting these deportations of people back to Syria and Afghanistan demand that you actually have diplomatic relationships with those countries. And that's not something that's really here right now. Like that would require a certain level of normalization with the Taliban government. That's very uncomfortable. That's very politically uncomfortable. The other thing that is a major issue, do you want to react to that, Armin? You made a face.
No, I mean, what the issue is that Afghanistan and Syria, their economic hardship, and it's a war-torn country, so it's legally questionable to send people back there. That's the issue you're talking about.
That's one element to it. That's one element
Yeah,
to it.
that is, it's insane that that's even an issue. It's insane that that's an issue. So you are, as the government, you have been elected by citizens of a nation state to take care of the citizens of this nation state. That is your responsibility, right? So even if you are voluntarily agreeing with certain human, international human rights to follow, that is because the citizens of that nation states want you to. This, you get your power from the citizens. You are an agent of the citizens. The very same citizens, if they want you to now prioritize, like, okay, you have gone too far with adhering to laws that are threatening this country, I need you to shift your focus back to us. Then you are, as the agent of the citizens, as their representative, now you need to focus your attention back on the citizens. I'm not against kindness against other, with against kindness or taking care of other individuals, but you cannot do that in your capacity as a representative of people that have hired you to do a different task. If you want to be kind to other people, that's nice, that's noble, go ahead and do that from within you, with your own power, with your own capacity, with your own resources. If another group of people have given you resources and the power to take care of them within that framework, within that job, then you are required to do your job, which is taking care of them. Again, I don't want to dismiss kindness and sympathy and humanism and taking care of people, but as a politician, you have a job. And if you don't do your job, which is taking care of the citizens of a certain nation state, then you should be fired from that job. Does that make sense?
Totally. But I mean, for the record, I don't think economic hardship is a valid reason to claim asylum. Other forms of immigration, sure, not asylum. But so basically they're like, okay, whether we like it or not, the civil war in Syria is basically over. Like, it's only continuing in certain parts of the country. Like we can start sending people back. But there is the biggest problem, Armin, is that, say for example that there was an Afghan refugee in Germany and he did attack, or even just showed support, material support or whatever, to ISIS, and the German authorities find him to be a criminal because of that. Well, the German government, because of European human rights law, and also I believe that this is standard human rights law as adopted by the United Nations since the past century, is that you cannot return someone to a place where you have reason to believe that they will be tortured. So, for example, that Afghan ISIS supporter or member cannot legally be returned to Afghanistan because the Taliban and ISIS don't get along with each other, and they have reason to believe that he would be tortured in custody should he be returned. So now they're stuck with this ISIS supporter in their country because they do not have the legal means to deport him, even though he has been convicted of criminal offenses. Um, like this is what people here's I mean, let me actually do you have any reaction to that before I go off on a
Yeah.
tangent?
So think about this. Think about this international law, right? And this is why we want international law, we want international standards, but the fact that international law makes no sense in certain situation, it makes people have to violate international law. And this is such a harm to all international laws because we're normalizing violating international law, because in this
Yeah.
situation it makes sense to violate international law. This international law in Germany, for example, that Germany is following, says that there are ISIS members that you cannot deport because many ISIS members come from Afghanistan and Taliban is anti-ISIS. So if you deport ISIS members to Afghanistan, there is a high chance that they're going to be tortured by the Taliban. So think about it. This is not an international law that people who wrote it didn't think about the consequences. The law says that if you send somebody back and there's likelihood of them getting tortured, then you cannot send them back. This makes it so that every ISIS member that comes out of Afghanistan to Germany, Germany should keep. That's the consequences of this law, which, and this is not a hypothetical, this is what is happening. Germany is forced to keep ISIS members, knowing that they're ISIS members coming from Afghanistan, because the Taliban in Afghanistan tortures ISIS members. That means Germany should own up. This is our problem now, and there's nothing we could do, because if we do that, if we do anything else, we're violating international law. If the international law is telling you that you have to keep ISIS members, known ISIS members, that are coming into your country, and even if they're committing acts of terror, you cannot send them back to Afghanistan. You have to keep them. This means that Germany would be justified now to violate international law. And the consequences of this is the lack of seriousness of all international law. Like, if the normalization of violation of international law basically destroys the whole bond and the whole framework that countries are working, like the European Union is now also normalizing violation of international law, and again justifiably, because they're going out with the pushback laws, basically sending back people that are coming to Europe, claiming asylum without processing their case, because there's just too many of them, and they themselves are admitting that we are violating international laws. But unfortunately, they have to. It's the international law that is unjustifiable and unreasonable, not what Germany or Europe is doing right now. They cannot handle this insanity. This is insanity. They have to violate international law. Which also, by the way, I know this is a bit of a different topic, but I have to mention this every time. This also shows how Israel was always right when they were violating international law, and they're like, okay, we have to violate international law because this is a matter of survival. Like, Germany and Europe as a whole is just having a little bit of taste of what it means to be put in a position that you are forced to violate international law, because they're not even facing the same threat that Israel is facing. I mean, this is a challenge, but it's not the same challenge of, like, lack of existence is not an issue here. For Israel, it is. So people are condemning Israel, like, oh, you're violating international law here, you're violating international there. And Israel is like, well, screw you. I have to survive. I have to be able to exist. So that's my priority. And now other countries are saying, like, yeah, okay, we are violating international law as well, because this is too much of a cost to pay for following international law. So again, I don't know what the process of updating international law is, but for it to be able to have any relevance, it needs to change. These laws make no sense. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, well, they were written in a time, many of them, not all, when the context of the world and the reason why they were written into law at that time was very, very different. They were reacting to a specific environment, and now the environment has changed or become more complex. I think what's really interesting is in some of the coverage I was watching about this, they were talking about how some members of the opposition party, not I forget the name, not the AFD, were basically saying that they were planning to declare a state, or they would like to declare a state of emergency regarding the asylum situation in Germany, because they can basically get around the law of the European courts by declaring a state of emergency, which I think is it's a very interesting process. And but the question is, of course, on some of the things that Armin has, excuse me, not Armin, on some of the things that I have seen proposed by different politicians and different commentators, is that basically many of them, if not all, will be challenged in European courts. But the problem is that the German public wants to see action being taken now. And German bureaucracy is a bitch. So there are no short, quick, sexy, reassuring actions that can be taken immediately. That ask is very difficult. And the party
I
of
disagree.
okay, well, that's my understanding anyway. I'm no German political analyst. Um, but basically, and this is a big problem for the party of Olaf Scholz because they're about to have regional elections in two states or whatever you call them, provinces in East Germany, I believe. And there is, from what I hear, heavy probability that they could go towards the AFD, which would further secure AFD dominance in national politics. So this happened at a yeah, no, the elections are happening today, right? Um yeah, it could go towards the AFD. They're losing to the AFD. Are they happening like right now? Are the polls coming in right now? Um so that could drastically shift the tone.
So when you said there's no quick solutions, I understand when people say that. You send me a very helpful analyst, expert on immigration, arguing that there is no quick solutions. I know, I understand that that guy is an expert, okay, but there's no quick long-term solutions, right? But there is a quick short-term solution, which is stop everything until you come up with a more complicated solution, right? If you, I understand that longer-term solution is more complicated and nuanced, and there's no like ones that you could wave to come up with the perfect plan. But my response to that is stopping everything might not be, is maybe too simplistic and might be not the detailed nuanced immigration plan that you want, but it is temporarily, you should have that until you figure that more complicated nuanced solution, right? So when people say this is more complicated, Armin, you don't understand, I do understand. The more complicated solution requires time. So work on that. In the meantime, when you don't have that, stop everything until you come up with that. Short term, come up with the simplistic, basic, uh, quick answer for short term. Long term, go with that more complicated plan. Short term, the answer is simple: stop everything. Stop everything until you come up with that better plan. I don't know. What do you
I
think?
know, but like is that even legal? That's what we mean by there aren't good sexy
Sue me.
short-term solutions. Sue me.
No, Germany should be like, yeah, my okay, challenge me in the courts of like the EU and stuff. Let's set and do it. Let the EU. I mean, who are we kidding? Who's Germany is a big part of the EU, right? So
Mhm.
if Germany wanted to, if they could be leading, changing these standards, right? I mean, I mean, grow some balls. Like this is what people want. This is what people are like. You know what? Fuck it. This is the law. We have to change the law. I'm sorry. Okay, let's actually let me violate the law so you could challenge me, so I could appeal it, and I'll challenge you back, and this will be the start of changing the law. You know, if you do that, people are like, "Oh my god, these people actually have a grew a backbone. Like this is amazing. Wow, this party. Let's vote. This is what people want. This is what people want. This will get you more votes. This will get you more votes. I mean, if you get if the EU challenges you because of your violating this law, a lot of Germans will be like, "Oh my god, they're doing this even though they're being challenged by Brussels." Wow, like that will get you more popular with Germans. They will
Oh
vote for
yeah,
you
there'd be
more. Like they're
tons of member
resistant.
states in the EU who would be like, "We got you, bro."
Yeah, you want to defeat AFD. This is how you do it. They're getting more
Mm.
popular. You want to defeat them. Stand up to the. I mean, it's not like Germany is going to do that because. But again, I'm dreaming. I know I'm dreaming. They won't do something that. I mean, they are technically. They're already starting. I mean, it's very little. So this is what I have. Germany recently deported 28 Afghan nationals who were convicted criminals, marking the first such deportation since the Taliban took power in Afghanistan in 2021. So,
Mm.
I mean, I know this is only 28, but this is a violation of certain rules. Like this could legally be challenged. So this shows that they are doing. I mean, this guys, look at where we are. We're celebrating that they're violating international laws because that is showing some backbone. You know what I mean? There is like,
Is
okay,
no, here, let me clarify something. It is not necessarily violating international law. It is only violating international law in the instance
it,
that you have reason to believe that they would be tortured upon
I
return,
know.
and that
Let
is
me,
not the case for all people convicted of criminal offenses.
yeah, let me rephrase that. They are doing things that could be argued by legal professional that this is a violation. These are not clear cut, right? This is something that you would do. Some legal experts will like, you cannot do that, and then your legal experts will say, well, actually, and their legal experts will say, like, well, I have an actually on your actually, and then you will fight it in courts, right? So, it's a long process. But the fact that they're even crossing certain things that are considered red lines by some legal experts is a start. I mean, it's a very slow start, but it's something. So yeah, so the deportations are happening. Some people are angry. Some people say you can't do that. Some people say like we can. Some people say like even if it's a violation, fuck it, we have to do it. So this is like it's a huge back and forth. But yeah, so I
Well, I
have
mean,
some
the
other points, but
scale
like,
of the
will you go ahead?
problem is pretty large. There are 74,000 rejected asylum cases that have not been deported from Germany. Only 5% of those, I believe, have actually been deported out of the 74,000 people that should no longer legally be in Germany.
This is such a look how slow we're moving, right? We're talking about thousands and thousands of people coming in, and they just deported 28 people, and this is big news, and people are challenging it, and this is like, so Germany had to conduct complex negotiations to facilitate these deportations. So imagine the amount of legal costs and negotiations that they had to go through to deport 28 people. They're letting in. So this is why I'm saying you have to stop everything when it comes to letting people in. You had to go through so much work and effort and resources to deport 28 people, and then you're letting in people in the thousands, in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, there was a
So
huge increase last year.
you cannot like, even if you wanted to, like, the bureaucracy and the legal framework is so complicated that even when we make progress, we're talking progress of like, oh my god, congratulations Germany, you deported 28 people. This is it. Oh my, I don't, the comparison just makes me, yeah, this is, you have to just stop. You have to stop. Like, even if this is how fast you're progressing when it comes to deportations, then the main solution is to just stop bringing people in, because you're not even close to the level of solving this mess that you got yourself in. Not even close. Not even
Mhm.
close. Not even
I
close.
think it was oh, I just lost my train of thought. In some of the analysis that we were watching together before the show, Armin, about this, there were some analysts saying, or news anchors who were like, "Oh, well, isn't it so wrong that we have basically coalesced and normalized the far right narrative that migration is a security and terrorism issue?" And I'm like, wait, excuse me? Like, when is migration not an essential part of national security? Like, what? You're saying you're normalizing a far right narrative? Also, is that not is this not like a crystalline example of exactly their point? Like, how dare you make it seem like we're normalizing something evil when there is so much statistical evidence to show that there is a serious issue going on. It's not made up. It's not all bigotry. Like, you literally have people claimed by ISIS attacking diversity festivals. You can't make this shit up. Like, that that attitude, it felt so like I don't know how to put this, like nannying, like um it really frustrated me. And I think it's really complicated because there are tons of people that come to Germany and they assimilate very well and they contribute to the German economy very well. And they adopt the values of the state and they want to defend it and they want it to continue to be a great country. But we cannot ignore the fact that in this past, 10 months, we have seen protests where thousands of people came out and demanded an end to the dictatorship of values and demanded Sharia law in Germany. That's not that's not made up. Like this is not it feels like gaslighting.
Yeah, and actually, to your point, regards to migrants that are coming in that are so helpful and useful to the country, the problem is that mass migration, illegal migration, and unfiltered migration makes you have less of that, right? Because they're coming in ahead of those people, right? So being against mass migration, unfiltered migration, and illegal migration, it's actually a pro-migration position because there will be much less people coming in. You will be able to vet them better, and also those people would be able to get ahead of the line because they're not your system of migration is not overwhelmed with all these people, all these uh, barbarians coming at the going coming through the gate and destroying your country. So you will be able to be in a much more stable, orderly, legal framework. Be able to have a much better framework where you're allowing in people that you, with a strict vetting process, have identified as people who are valuable to your country, right? So this is actually being against mass migration is actually a pro-migration position, pro-legal migration, pro-filtered migration, pro value based and skill based migration. I do want to mention something else. Wait. Oh, yeah. So one thing else I wanted to highlight every time we see something like this is that when you see crimes like this, I always think to myself that it's such a shame that this mass migration problem becomes an issue only when a crime happens, because to me the problem is so much bigger than this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is for every person that is coming in that is a criminal that is willing to commit crimes and does commit crimes. There are thousands of people, thousands of for every one of them that are not going to commit any crimes, but they are harmful to your society. This is just the peak harm. This is just a reflection of somebody that is the most out of line with your values. But there are many, many other people that are not in line, not aligned with your values, but not to this point, but still to the point that they're harmful to your country. So every time I see a crime like this, I'm like, okay, this person represents of a 10,000 other people that will not commit what he did, but are still harmful to Germany. And I think they are, on a long term basis, they're actually even more harmful to Germany than this one individual on a long term basis. And those people would have never even been discussed to this level, or would have been stopped unless something like this happens. So that's one point I want to mention. Also, regarding diversity, I myself am not against diversity. Okay, I'm against this version of diversity, right? So diversity. The problem is that for the sake of diversity, you're letting in the most vile in. So I mean, the way I like to think about it is like if you're cooking and somebody comes and like, okay, you don't have, this is bland, this is doesn't have many spices in it. You need to add more spices. Is that good advice? Yes, that's good advice. Add more spices in. But like for the sake of adding more spices, don't put shit in your stew. They're like, hey, you ask for more taste, you ask for more diversity of spices and taste in my stew. So I am adding shit in my stew. Are like, okay, I said more. I didn't say anything. I didn't say for the sake of diversity to add shit in your stew. No one likes shit in their stew. Okay, so anyways, that's what I'm.
What are you
This
trying
is
to do?
this is
Kill
what
me?
we. Right. So, um. Oh yeah. Okay, and also. Yeah, let's look at some of the comments that is relevant to the stream, because I wanted to mention something else.
Yeah,
Oh
there
yeah,
was
no.
one more thing I wanted to, actually two more things. I'll start with the shorter one. One is that this is heartbreaking, I think, to me on a personal level, because Armin and I both have close friends who are seeking asylum in Germany right now, and they are wonderful candidates, and they have survived hell. And I mean, I don't know, it just makes it so personal to me. The idea of them getting sent back is terrifying.
Mm.
It's genuinely terrifying because we know the nature of what they've been through and what they've survived, and we know that if they were sent back, that would likely be the end of them. Um and the consequence of these bad policies is that now people who are legitimately very good candidates for integrating into German life and providing value to the German nation are now put at risk and put at stake because of a failure to properly deal with the bad apples. You don't deal with the bad apples, the entire barrel goes rotten. It's
Right.
scary.
So, so here's the thing. I might sound heartless for saying this, but actually, if you think about it, this is actually the most humanistic thing to do. Um, I say a complete pause on letting anyone in. And then you could go find an example of somebody that deserves to come and actually has a good case and it's actually would be a productive member of society and assimilate very well. And because of a complete pause, we're putting their lives in danger. What I'm saying is that the way that the asylum process is being taken advantage of, there are more people like that are not making it in, right? For all, there are many people. The mass migration is making a lot of genuine asylum cases not successful because people are overwhelming the system, right? So for any my if I say pause everything, right, and you're like, Armin, because you pause everything, that person was stayed in Afghanistan and now they're dead. Okay, my argument is that for every one of those cases, I could show you 10 or 100 people that were justified giving them was just it was win-win for both sides. That was a win for Germany, was a win for that person. I could find you 100 cases of people that weren't able to take advantage of the asylum process because it was overwhelmed with mass migration,
Yeah.
right? So there will be more harm done if we don't do this. So I'm not being heartless. I'm being practical. I'm being pragmatic. That's the better word. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Um.
don't think you are. I don't think you are a genuinely heartless person at all. Um, which actually brought me to my second point, and which is, Armin, I would like you to define what you mean when you say mass migration.
Mhm. Uh, so when I use the word mass migration, I am saying that migration to the point where when you are with makes a country unable to effectively do two things. So whatever legal process and vetting process that it has, if migration, if you increase the numbers to the point where you're not effectively enforcing your migration laws or whatever vetting process that you have in place, if you're incapable of um, validating, confirming that people are being vetted properly, then you have too much migration. You have to bring down the migration where you could legally, like, to enforce your laws effectively and also to enforce your vetting process quite effectively. If you don't have the resources to handle the number of people coming in, then you're bringing too many people in. So that's one way to realize that you have gotten from migration to mass migration. Another way to realize that you have gotten from migration to mass migration is if the strategies and the policy that you have in place for people to properly assimilate within your society and integrate with the rest of society, if the numbers are high enough for that not to be able to effectively take place, then you have gotten from migration to mass migration. So that's the two metrics I use to see if you are doing mass migration rather than just migration. If people are not properly assimilating and the numbers are too high for them to assimilate effectively, or if you don't have enough resources to vet them properly or for you to legally enforce your migration laws.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was important for you to operationalize that term because it's a buzz term that a lot of people use without actually being specific about what they mean. And
Mhm.
especially like conservative commentators. And I find it so frustrating because I'm like, you're just throwing around that word without actually articulating what that means. So, how can we actually tackle it if you're just using it to just talk about like all people? That drives me crazy. And
Uh,
honestly, it's a damn
But
shame because go
how
ahead.
was my definition of it satisfactory? Like, do you think like I don't use that as a buzzword. I know what I'm talking about when I say mass migration,
Mhm. I think
right?
so. My personal opinion is I think you should it bears repeating more often. Um
Hmm.
um and it's a
I
damn
think it
shame.
was a very good. I was, to be honest, I thought that was a fantastic definition, and I was waiting for a compliment from you that I did not get.
Oh,
That's what I was
okay.
waiting for.
Mufti Armin, please
Anyways,
forgive me. You
yes,
you showed
please.
me your wisdom once more. Um
Sorry.
it's interesting because in many ways I share an inheritance of mass migration both within parts of my ancestry and within the history and building of my nation. And it sucks to see it go this way, and it's interesting when you go look at the mass migration that happened throughout America's history, where hundreds of thousands of European peasantry came to build a new life here. You can see areas where there was basically a rise or an explosion of crime that followed different immigrant communities into the US at that time. My understanding is that because I don't remember what this analyst I was watching, I don't remember how he put it exactly. But basically, if you control for men that are unmarried and between a certain age, if you look at the statistics from that time and control for men of those characteristics, the amount of crime basically completely drops, meaning it is primarily driven by men with those characteristics to the point that when this analyst was going into it in detail, I was literally like, oh my God, what is wrong with men? This is insane. But then I'm also
Hey
like,
now, hey now,
maybe
hey
I'm
now.
making a joke, Armin. I'm making a joke. But then I'm also like, if we just don't if we control for those two factors nowadays, would that eliminate this problem? I think it might eliminate this problem.
Okay, so in defense of men, it's true that men are responsible for more crimes. Okay, but if you want to
Vastly
go that,
more, exponentially more.
yes, okay. Should I also mention that they're also responsible for more science and
Do it.
more?
Do
Okay.
it. You're not going to
For
get me to
more
back down.
entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Oh, you thought I
Okay.
was going to cower? Nah.
Okay, so
Ay, ay,
we
ay.
have super chats and also some. Before we go to the super chats, I want to highlight the stuff that we have starred to respond, and then we go to the super chats because they're
Yes.
relevant
We
to
got a
the
lot of
day.
stuff to go through. Um, okay. So, oh, atheists are just saying, we love you, Susanna. I love you too, friend. Um, okay, here's a comment that you highlighted. Damari is saying diversity isn't bad. It's just too much Islam.
Yes, its diversity is good if you just make sure that you're not allowing everything in for the sake of diversity. Okay, diversity is good if you're very. You could have more, stuff. Just make sure it's good stuff. It's not. It's not. Don't add shit to your stew for the sake of more flavor. Okay. Yeah. Basically.
Um, and Arthur was saying, uh, sorry, except for the basics, I'm ashamed of my German. Oh, no, I think you're talking about
Yeah.
your. He's not talking about being ashamed of being German. I think he's talking about his German language proficiency.
No. No. I think
Except for
he's
the
saying
basics, I'm
that.
ashamed of my German, like basic
Oh, okay.
language ability.
Okay, okay, never mind. I wanted to call you out. So I misunderstand you. I thought you said I'm ashamed of being German, and I wanted to call it out. So, but you didn't say that. Okay, okay, never mind then.
Hans is saying that's
Oh, wait a minute.
liberalism.
I should call it that. Don't be ashamed of your German. You are learning a new language. You're not going to be don't be a perfectionist. The fact that you learned a new language is admirable. Okay, let's go with
That's
this.
true. That is. Oh yeah, he's confirming. I was correct. That's how I feel
Yes.
about my Spanish right now. I'm
No, you
very.
should be. I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
you're an asshole! How dare you?
Uh,
Oh my god, hurt. That was hurtful. You haven't even
mm.
heard me speak Spanish. How dare you,
I just
sir?
wanted to. I just
You
wanted to
just
say
wanted to take a
that.
shot at me? Is that what this
I just
is?
wanted to.
This is a
I
joke
just
to
wanted to cause pain.
you? You know I have a failure complex.
Oh
Emotional
yeah.
damage.
Okay.
Okay. Anyways, Hans is saying that's liberalism in action. I know you're gonna have an opinion about this, Armin. Take it
Yeah,
away.
and also Germany is a liberal state, so it's just acting to liberalism. So, uh, and it says then Han is saying, Armin, you have no right to criticize Germany. They are just acting according to your liberal agenda. So this Han guy is, by the way, you guys, if you guys don't know who this guy is, Han is somebody in our live chat that suffers from low IQ, because I have explained this more a lot, and he still doesn't get it. He's an anti-liberal who's a bit stupid. So we explain time and time and again how nationalism and protecting your border integrity and protecting your nation state is actually completely in line with liberal values. But this guy, I use him. I like to use idiots, because idiots don't understand something when you explain it to them. It's an effective tool for us to highlight in case people are new here and we need to repeat something. So Han is good. It's good that Han is here. So even though something is explained to him, he keeps saying this, so I could use him as an excuse to highlight his comments. So I say something that maybe other people who haven't been here before, I have an opportunity to highlight it again, right? So protecting your border integrity. So Germany failing at being liberal, because Germany is a liberal nation state, but that doesn't mean that everything they do is perfect. Just because we consider a country liberal nation state, that doesn't mean that we support everything that they do. That's obviously insanity. Like anybody with IQ of 2.5 would understand that us being liberal doesn't mean that every policy by every single liberal country would be accepted by us. Obviously not, right? And nationalism, patriotism, and liberalism, not only they are not in contradiction with each other. In fact, it was invented. That nationalism was invented by liberalism. So anybody who out there who's a proud patriot or a nationalist, you have liberalism to thank. That everybody here who wants to defend a sound migration policy or wants to protect the country's border integrity, you actually have liberalism to thank for that. There we go. And also another thing about this hand who wants to come and out me every time here, try to tell people expose Armin. Does Armin, but Armin have? Okay, this guy's English is not as good either. Armin has Muslim friends as well. Oh my. Oh no, expose.
Oh my yeah.
Oh wow. Oh no, Armin exposed. Armin has Muslim friends. You don't say. You don't say. All right, so um oh, you start this one.
As if that's such a bad thing. Oh yeah, Iran is saying in Israel our hearts are broken. We need support emotionally. Yeah, I literally just found out from people commenting on the live stream that they recovered the bodies of 6 hostages, including
Oh
Hirsch, Goldberg,
shit.
Pollen,
Hmm. Okay.
saying that they
All
were
right.
killed
So
shortly before being found. So I'm literally gonna go cry about this after the show because I can't do it right now.
okay, okay,
Oh
okay.
my god.
Gotcha.
Um, Atheist is saying again, Armin, human rights are for humans, not for terrorists.
That's not the right narrative.
Terrorists
That's
do
not
have
the right.
human rights. They do have human rights.
Yes,
They do.
guys, this is not the right way to put it. And also, Damari was saying something like this as well, saying, "I totally disagree on giving terrorists any human rights or dealing with them while being chained by international laws, because international law wasn't meant for those that don't believe in it." That's absolute nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. International law is not for only for people who believe in it. Okay, international law, human rights are for all humans, including terrorists. The way that you have to frame this, if you want to be successful at this, is that we have priorities. Not that terrorists don't have human rights. Terrorists do have human rights. However, we sometimes have to care about something else that is a priority, because our country, our liberal nation state, would not be able to be in a position to care about human rights if our nation states is not going to be able to remain liberal, right? So don't talk about this as if terrorists don't have human rights. Terrorists are by definition human. So if you say terrorists, I don't know how you define humans. In fact, you to be a terrorist, you have to be human. Show me one other animal that has terrorists. Okay, so a precondition for being a terrorist is to be
Canadian
human.
geese.
Yeah.
Canadian geese. I
Okay,
literally
fine.
refer to them as terrorists. They come and they migrate here. They poop
Okay,
all
they're
over our
two.
beaches, terrorize me with their shit everywhere. I'll be walking around with my boyfriend and I'll be like, "Oh, look, there are the terrorists," and it's just a bunch of Canadian geese. I hate those geese. Sorry, continue.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. There are two animals in the world that are capable of being terrorists. One humans, and the other one is Canadian geese. Okay, fair. But nothing other than that. Okay. So don't say they are terrorists. They're not human because they're terrorists. They are human. In fact, when they're doing terrorism, they're doing a very human thing, and they do have human rights. But as a nation state, as a government, as a state of a nation state, my priority is to take care of this nation that I am the state of. Okay, that is that should be your narrative. Also, um, you should have a different name so that we could refer to you better, because you say atheist. So username atheist is saying, Armin, I am an ex-Muslim from Pakistan and I want to take asylum in USA, but I want to come to USA on scholarship or on merit like jobs, etc. Yes. And also, atheist who's saying that, he's a Pakistani ex-Muslim, and he agrees that immigration should be banned in Germany and other Western countries and mass deportation is needed. So you see, this is somebody in Pakistan, he's an ex-Muslim in Pakistan, and he wants to come to the West, and he understands, he could put two and two together and understand that as somebody who himself wants to come to the West, he's saying that immigration should be banned in Germany and other Western countries. See, this is what you get when you actually put two and two together, right? This is not a far right racist bigot in Germany or United States saying this. This is somebody from Pakistan who he himself wants to go to the United States or Germany
Well,
or
yeah, because if
Netherlands.
he wants to come here, he doesn't want to be surrounded by the people he's trying to escape. Like the amount of terrorizing shit that happens inside refugee detainment centers across Europe.
Hmm.
Because, Armin and I hear horror stories firsthand from people about who they have to live with when they're trying to flee for their lives and still remain in hiding and still remain in secret, while they literally risk their life to come to this country to begin with to escape this stuff. I mean, this is why some of the people that I have met that are the most hardcore about immigration in Europe are people who are immigrants and refugees to Europe themselves, because they're like, you have no idea what I've seen, Susanna. You don't want these people here. Um,
So
uh,
can I say something regards to the terrorists are not human, so they shouldn't have human rights?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Might I remind everybody that the beginning of the glory of liberalism and their absolute takeover of the world order, uh, and the demonstration of their superior ways and strength started after they, against all odds, they defeated all the enemies of liberalism in World War II when they came on top, and they crushed their enemies. And what did they do to demonstrate how liberalism is superior after crushing its enemies? The Nuremberg trials. What did they do with the Nuremberg trials? Were they Nazis? Were they terrorists? Because they gave them the opportunity. They didn't torture them, right? They gave them a trial. They gave the Nazis a chance to defend themselves. And by doing that, they advertised the superiority of liberalism to the entirety of the world. The people who were responsible for gassing Jews, Romanis, LGBT, and handicapped people in the millions, they basically they industrialized, they industrialized death. Those people, when they captured them, they gave them a trial and lawyers to defend themselves. That is liberalism. That is the strength of liberalism. That is the superiority of liberalism. If the terrorists get you to the point where you violate the principles of liberalism, then they have succeeded in taking out your foundations. Remember Nietzsche's quote: when you're fighting monsters, be careful that you do not become one. Because knife attacks, instability, those might cause those are harmful, right? Those causes instability, crime rates, nervousness, lack of security and stability in society. But if you are scared enough for you to change your liberal way, then the consequences are so much higher than just higher crime rates, because your foundations are being targeted and your entire future is now at question. So be careful when terrorists make you steer away from your liberal ways. Then there's so much more at risk than just higher crime rates.
Um. So, basically, Atheist is asking, do you think that there should be a separate asylum law for ex-Muslims who escaped Islamic countries and want an asylum in the West? Long story short, no. I don't think we're at a place where we can implement that in an effective manner.
We already have, here's the thing, okay? We already have the framework to be able to recognize that the laws already support ex-Muslims, because the laws in place already recognize that ex-Muslims are in danger and require protection. What we don't have is the resources to be able to help them and to be able to recognize who's really in danger. We don't need to change the laws for allowing ex-Muslims in. We just need to reduce the migration to the level where we have the resources to be able to do what the law is already designed to do.
Also, more education on it and better, I guess, filtering and discernment of who is within the staff within these asylum systems, because I know people who are seeking asylum in Germany who have had their cases sabotaged by Muslims that are supposed to be employed by the German state to further asylum claims. And when they figure out that person is ex-Muslim, um, retaliation is taken against them by their own supposed social workers, which is horrifying. Um, okay, we got a lot of super chats. My word. Okay, let's go through these super
Thank you,
chats.
guys.
Um, Asian American is celebrating his membership. Thank you, my friend, for over 2 years. Saying, is China right or left in their treatment of Muslims? Well, I think this. Are you doing a play on words here on right versus correct, or do you literally mean right leaning or left leaning?
I think this is not a right or left thing. And I don't even care about right or left. This is more about a correct or incorrect evaluation rather than right or left, right? Right or left has different meanings depending on the time or the country that you live in. So what is right in one country could be left in another country. What is left in one country could be right in another country. When it comes to separation of liberalism versus illiberalism, or and conservative versus progressive, the standards are more clear. When it comes to right versus left, we are talking whether economic. Are we talking economical or social? Because the metric is completely different when we're talking about the economy or we're talking about social. So if we're talking about economy, the more hands off you are, you're right leaning. The more hands on you are, you're more left leaning. When you're talking about social, the more hands on you are, you're actually more right leaning, and the more it's the opposite. The more hands off you are, you're left leaning, right? So I guess if you want to describe this as social, if China is more hands on, more involved, then you could argue that this is more left leaning. But again, the right and left categorization is so all over the place that I don't know if it's even useful. I'm more interested. I mean, the conservative versus progressive has more workable definitions, but I think the focus should be most useful focus is liberal versus illiberal rather than right versus left, because everybody has their own definition when it comes to what these words mean.
Yeah, well, regardless of which way you cut it, I don't think their treatment of the Uyghurs is okay, to say the least.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think and I think it's not effective. I mean, yeah, it's China, obviously, but yeah, let's continue.
Eve is saying, "Oh, this is with regard to earlier." Oh, I'm about to sneeze. Excuse
Please
me.
bless you.
Thank you. It to my defense with the insult, it was the video from last week where we were talking about the Taliban femicide wave, where someone was calling you pussy giver sister. Yeah, Eve. That was our bad. We didn't catch the sarcasm. We didn't understand the reference. No, no, no hate towards you.
Thank you
Um,
for the super chat.
yeah,
Wait, what
thank you
did
for
she
the super
say?
chat.
It was yeah, okay, okay. Now I know every time. Yeah, I'm gonna remember that
Um,
insult from
Arjun gave a super chat saying, technically, most Islamic countries are more harsh on ISIS members than the West. So why can't the West prosecute them and jail them instead of deportation? That is the current. That is the
Yeah,
only
that's what
cause
they're
of
doing
redress available right now. That's
because it's overburdening their system. They're not citizens. You should be able to the international law should be changed in a way that you could deport them, because if it overburdens your system, then there's a lot more stake. There's a lot more at stake. Again, here's the thing: if if you send an ISIS member back to an Islamic country, are they at risk of being tortured? Yes. Um, should we care about that? I mean, I don't sympathize with this ISIS member. Like, I'm not going to cry over what happens to an ISIS member. These are certain standards, certain principles that we abide by to remain liberal. Even if we want to say that's a principle that we should care about, which we should, as a matter of principle for a liberal nation state, the international law should understand that there has to be priorities, right? An ISIS member being tortured back where I send them is less of an issue for me than my prison system and my legal system being so overworked where I cannot maintain law and order in my own nation state, right? So I'm not saying completely dismiss that as a principle. I'm just saying that there are other liberal principles that should be prioritized. There are other liberal principles that should be prioritized. For example, me being able to remain a liberal nation state, okay? Because none of these liberal principles would be abided by if I'm no longer even a liberal nation state. So if something is threatening me, especially law and order, then yeah, I'm sorry, I have to. That's something that should take a back seat.
oops.
Yep.
This is so funny. So this person has a picture of Ayatollah Khamenei in their uh, avatar and saying skinny Santa Claus who marries the naughty kids.
What?
And their super chat of $4.99 is just saying $4.99. Well, thank you for the super chat.
Thank you.
$4.99.
Thank you.
Kenny, my dear Kenny, gifted 5 Atheist Republic memberships. Thank you, Kenny, which is an amazing reminder that you can support Atheist Republic and what we do, because it is a lot more than just me and Armin. We have a whole team, by becoming a member. So hit the join button down below and you get access to members only content and some special emojis.
Yes, I'm trying to. We have some member only live streams that I did quite recently. So if you are a member, consider going watching those live streams that were only for members. On days that you're seeing that I'm not doing a live stream, I'm actually doing it. Many of them, I'm actually doing a live stream. The reason why you're not seeing it is because it's members only. So yeah, so and I'm trying to get to a point where I'm doing one live stream every week for members only. So that's a special thank you to our members.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Arjun is saying even if genuine cases are successful, they might be at risk in illiberal Germany due to mass migration, just as they were back home, if not more. I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to here. Are you talking about how we're discussing the issue where the people that are trying to escape certain abuses then are faced with people who still hold those abusive attitudes? Like, is that what you're referring to? I'm not entirely certain. Um,
But
so
I do agree when you have mass migration, the risks becomes high, even if you're trying to be careful, if that's what you're saying.
mhm. um, Carl Schler just gave €5, no comment. Thank you, Carl. Um,
Thank you.
Blacklock gave $20. Thank you for the generous super chat. Saying the problem with is having migrants that aren't assimilating to their welcoming nations question marks. If you want the country you migrated in to have laws and customs similar to yours,
That's,
don't migrate, just influence politics in your country. If you want the country you migrated to have laws and customs similar to
so he's saying,
okay.
why are people coming to countries that they don't like their laws and customs? Why not just stay there and change the laws and customs? Well, because most of them are not migrating because they love the laws and customs. Most of them are migrating for better economic opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to keep their customs and their traditions and their, most problematically, their values, while taking advantage of all the extra income or the benefits that they're getting from your welfare and from your maybe economic opportunities. So it's because of the money, it's because of economics that they're coming, not because they like your laws or because they like your, I mean, many of not all of them, the ones that we're talking about here.
Okay. Stu Bird gave a $5 super chat saying until the 1990s, there was no welfare in the US for migrants. It was work hard or starve. I don't actually know the history of these policies, so I don't know how much that's true. Um,
I mean, um the welfare for in the US from migrants. um okay, so whatever you think regarding to what welfare we should have for migrants, one thing that is insane that we all should be agreeing on, and we don't apparently, is the fact that we have welfare for illegal migrants. Like that should be that should be an obvious no. uh, we could debate how much welfare we want for migrants or other people, but even if that's a discussion, it should obviously be for legal migrants only, not for illegal migrants. And yeah.
okay, so let's go to the next one. My Arjun is saying, my first question to my potential wife in an arranged marriage would be, do you have the values of Atheist Republic?
Good question. That's fantastic question.
Hilarious.
You're going
Um,
to be single for a long time. Oh no, it's arranged. But wait a minute, it's wait a minute, it's arranged, so it's fine then. Okay, so just ask her
oh
whatever
my
you want.
god. Blacklock gave another super chat saying, I migrated from my country because it didn't match the way I see life. I was not compatible with the culture. If you migrate because of war, please use the old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Do you have any response to
I
this?
mean, I agree, but this shouldn't even be a please. This should be a demand. Okay, this should be like, hey, you come here, can you please assimilate? They're like, or assimilate or get the f out. That is, it should be more of a demand rather than a request.
Um, Gajan is saying thoughts on neoliberal versus classical liberal divide. I'm sure you have lots of opinions on
Uh,
this, Armin.
yeah, I have. Depends on when you're talking. Depend. Like a neoliberal means many things to many different people. So it depends on if you're talking about values, or you're talking about economics, right? Are you talking about, um, you know, Keynesian model of economics versus Adam Smith or the Austrian school of economics? Or is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about liberalism, the classical liberalism when it comes to government just being hands off when it comes to people's way of life, or the more neoliberal version of it, trying to actually spread and force liberal values across the planet? Depends on which one of these divides you're talking about, right? I think you're talking about the latter one. I don't think you're talking about the economic one, right? And I do agree, if that's what you're talking about, I do agree with the position of governments trying to come up with an international framework where they could have certain values and rules that globally they abide by, because it has worked. I don't even have to come up with a rational response to this. I could come up with an empirical response to this, because that framework has been created through a new liberal framework, and we see the effects of it. So governments being somewhat involved in, the government not being neutral and actually being involved in spreading and also enforcing these values on a global scale, has been very effective. So I do take that position given how successful it has been. Does that make sense?
Completely. Okay. Oh, we got some more super chats from Gajan saying our future AI zookeepers. For our future AI zookeepers, I like to state that I am pro sapient rights. Human rights wording is too hominid centric. Yeah, Gajan, it's good to get this evidence out. Get the paper trail started now for when you're controlled by AI. I agree. And our AI overlords, I concur. Much too hominid centric. Gajan also said, if only the Japanese royal family and the scientists of Unit 731 were tried. Facts. America allowed Operation Paperclip and exchanged and pardoned for science. That that cannot be ignored. That is true. Um John also said, super chat, thank you, John, saying terrorists are not human. The quote, terrorists are not human, risks leading to civilian massacres, abuses. I think libs like me ought to debate if the JCPOA was worth it. Criticisms of it are merited. So, in the first point that he's making, I think he's leading to the point that if you say, oh, terrorists don't get human rights, then certain actors would have an incentive to just declare mass groups of people terrorists and just act on them with absolute impunity. I think that's what he's getting at. Um, and I'm not
I
sure how
mean,
this
it's just
connects to the
objectively not
JCPOA.
true. I mean, terrorists are not human. It's just objectively not true. Obviously, they're human. Like what are we? Like that's how is that? It's just objectively a non-factual statement, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We might not
Thank you
like
so
it,
much, John.
but this is in
Yeah.
fact a pretty uniquely human behavior.
Hmm. Right.
Now, the purpose of it is to do psychological warfare to make us question
It,
the
it
nature of
also, yeah, it
humanity and
also
each
makes
other.
us actually. Here's what it does. Here's what it does. Okay, because terrorism is a human problem that some humans do. If you try to dehumanize it, you are going to be much less equipped to tackle the problem, because it is through the human mindset that you have to understand the conditions that causes some people to become terrorists. If you try to remove them from humanity, like separate it so much that it's such a foreign thing to humanity as a whole, you make it unapproachable and ununderstandable. It is obviously something within the human mind that gets you to the condition for you to become a terrorist. And you have to look at it from that perspective. If you try to make them like orcs that are a completely different species that you do not understand, then the approach to understanding it will be seen as something as something that is unaccomplishable from the beginning. So the efforts to understand it and to try to tackle it will also be there will be less incentives for it.
Do you know who makes the most amazing, gorgeous, and other adjectives that I can't use here on YouTube, blasphemous art ever? We do! And for some reason, we are giving it away for free. Download them now using the link in the description before we change our mind.